Very popular documentary on air last night, Guy and Espina's alcohol documentary called Proof. He says blackouts, bad hangovers and even an embarrassing incident with Helen Clark weren't enough to stop him drinking. But 2 years ago he finally quit. Interesting too, he says a line which I think is great. He says no one had ever asked Guyan why he drank, but when he stopped drinking, everyone asked him why he didn't. So on the line with us is Guyan Espina. Hello, Guyan.
Kia ora e hoa.
Oh, kia ora. Kei te pia koe.
Kei te pai.
Really nice to talk with you, Guyan. So a lot of people have been intrigued, fascinated, and I might say kind of educated by your documentary last night. So clearly you felt you had a drinking problem, did you?
Yeah, I did, but wow, it took me a long time to recognise that. And it's been fantastic listening to your callers this afternoon. I've been listening for the last hour or so. And so many stories resonating and similar kinds of experiences. I think it's something that I was really frightened to give away because until I sort of tried to deny to myself that I had this issue with it, because it's such a massive part of life and so hard to envisage life without it that I wouldn't admit it to myself. And it took me, I don't know, I reckon about 35 years of heavy drinking. I drank probably till from about 15 or so. I gave up a couple of years ago. I was about 48.
What would you term heavy drinking?
Yeah, that's a good question because, I mean, we've all got different perceptions. I like that one about what's an alcoholic. Oh, someone who drinks more than I do, you know, as one definition of alcoholism. So in my younger years, it was real heavy drinking. You know, we'd try and knock off a bottle of spirits on a Friday night. In my later years, I think I formed those habits and then just, you know, it's a bit more refined as you get older, isn't it? You're drinking a nicer bottle of wine, or you're drinking earlier in the evening and you're not behaving in the same way. But it's the same pattern. But yeah, it is important to talk numbers, so let's do that. In the later years, a normal night drinking for me would be, 6 strong beers or so and maybe half a bottle of wine.
Gee.
Right.
Something around that.
Right.
Is this on your own or with someone else, or what? How would that work?
Yeah, no, just in social situations and parties. I mean, and on a big night, it'd be well more than that, and I'd lose count, and I'd lose track of what happened.
Would you drink at home though, on your own?
Yep. Sometimes. Yep, sometimes.
Yeah.
If I happened to be home on a Friday or Saturday night, then I would, absolutely. Or if I was in a hotel. I used to travel a lot back in the day with TVNZ. If I was in a hotel studying for a Q&A interview the next day, I'd be drinking. Not extreme amounts, but I would be. I'd easily knock over half a bottle of wine, a couple of beers from the minibar, go down to the bar in the hotel, have a couple of beers. Just so ingrained.
I found this a really an interesting discussion in the last hour, like you pointed out, Guy, and obviously your documentary resonated. And for a number of years, I don't know why particularly, but I have been fascinated around the issue of alcohol, probably because I enjoyed to have a drink, but I'm also pretty conscious of my health, and I'd started to read more and more reports about alcohol being related to various cancers and causal. And then I watched a documentary some years ago, maybe 10 years ago. Nigel Latter did a documentary on alcohol. Right. That was very, very good. And the alcohol industry plays a very powerful part of this country's, fabric, doesn't it? And so why has no government been keen to take it on? Because clearly there's an issue there with the social consequences of drinking. But why are we, if we really are concerned about mental health and just general health, alcohol is a real big contributor to poor health. Why are we so scared to take it on?
Well, I reckon there's a couple of things going on there. One is just numbers, right? So, if you look at the sheer number of people who do drink, and look, I've got no problem with that at all, that if you start to move and start to tighten things up or start to regulate more heavily, you risk the backlash. And there are famous examples back in history. You probably remember the Black Budget. Remember it, you might have read about it.
Yep.
1958, the guy puts the price of booze up, bang, it's a one-term Labour government.
Yep.
I mean, politicians are really frightened of touching or regulating alcohol. And it'll be fascinating to see what happens with Chloe Swarbrick's bill. She's got a bill in there which would tighten things up and I think take alcohol sponsorship out of sport. And I don't know, but if I was willing to bet, I doubt Labor or National will go near it.
So what will these organisations, because, there are a number of organisations that actually rely on kind of sponsorship and funding from alcohol companies, and mental health, for example, receives funding, don't they, from alcohol companies. Breast cancer research, things
It's
like
been
that.
done before. Tobacco was used to be big sponsors of all sorts of things back in the day. Rothmans, Pall Mall, and all that. And what happened was that the government brought in, what was it called? But basically the government took over those sponsorships. That's what happened, wasn't it, Kyle?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. I mean, I was a big cricket fan back in the day, and there's the Benson Hedges series. I mean, very fond memories of the boys in beige playing one-day cricket with the Benson Hedges series and stuff. But yeah, look, they say the sky will fall in without the tobacco sponsorship, and the poor little guys will get hurt. But they won't. I mean, come on. I mean, look they'll be lining up to sponsor the All Blacks if Steinlager wasn't able to do it. I think it's about 20 million poured into sport from alcohol sponsorship. I reckon there'd be companies lining up to replace that money, no problem at all. And part of the issue with that is it's just associating it with heroes. I mean, if you see that your heroes in any sport you can name are sponsored by alcohol companies, that's just another part of saying, look, this is the norm.
Last thing before you go, because again, I find the discussion just intriguing, because I don't see a way out of it. In that, there is so much around alcohol, so many people drink. You'll always hear from alcohol companies, why penalise just the mum and dad drinker who can handle their booze, who don't cause a problem? Why should they suffer by paying increased taxes or increased prices for their alcohol? But until we do that and make it less available, again, it's hard to say this without sounding like a wowser, because I enjoy a glass of wine, but the fact is, when booze was put into supermarkets, drinking went up exponentially, didn't it? There's a text here, Guy, says in Paraparaumu, a very small town, 8 bottle shops, and the biggest department in all, 3 supermarkets, is the alcohol department by a large margin, and you can get it in most dairies. There's the problem, isn't it? Availability.
Yeah, I mean, price, availability and marketing are the 3 big things that anyone will tell you about who's researched this stuff. And look, I'm not coming for anyone's booze or saying that they should drink less, but the major is they're comfortable with it, right? I think that's the key thing, if they're cool with it. And I think it's great, Simon, that you have a glass of wine. I'd do that too, mate, if I could. I never could. I couldn't quite ever have a handle on it. My main message is make it easier for people who choose not to drink. I've had so many callers, and I think James was saying this too, say, hey, look, I go to a social situation and people are really at me about why I'm not drinking. Make it cooler, and make it more accessible, and make it easier for people who don't want to drink. Make that more of an available option. And to me, the main thing there is the marketing. If you see it everywhere, if it's associated with every event from a birth, a death, a marriage, an engagement, the birth of a baby, the getting of a job, the losing of a job, if it's associated with everything like that and your sporting heroes, it's seen as a weird thing to do, not to drink. And so that's my main thing. It's a cool option not to drink if you want to, and we should make it easier for people to pursue that. That's my main message.
Hey, just one more thing, Guy, if you wouldn't mind. One of the reasons that you are quoted as saying why you gave away alcohol was an embarrassing incident with Helen Clark. Can you tell News Talk ZB listeners what that was?
Yeah, sure. If they can promise me to go to rnz.co.nz and have a watch of the documentary, I'd like to put that in, James.
Yep.
Look, that was one of many. I've got some other stories too, which I might tell at some point. Probably won't embarrass anyone else. But yeah, no, I had to work hard, play hard. Think everyone knows what I mean when I say that, because that's a big thing in the Kiwi culture. You work hard and then you get drunk, frankly. And we were in Antarctica, we were doing that, we were filming, and we did some good stories with Ed Hillary and stuff. And I hit the booze hard in the Scott-based bar, too hard on this occasion, and went to sleep with a sort of glass of wine at my fingertips, sort of spread-eagled out on the couch. And all the dignitaries came out the next morning, Sir Ed Hillary, Chief of Defence Force, Helen Clark, and a few others, and saw this rather overworked and over-lubricated journalist, spread-eagled on the couch. I mean, sort of embarrassed myself in front of probably the greatest living New Zealanders at the time.
Well, there's one good reason to give up, guys.
That's a good one.
Well, thank you very much for your time, mate, and thanks for your work on the documentary. Very good. You can see that doco on YouTube and also on TVNZ On Demand right now if you missed it last night.
And thank you guys for your interest and for a really good discussion this afternoon. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it very
Hall.
much.
Thought-provoking, opinionated, enlightening. The Leighton Smith Podcast.
Jeffrey Tugger from brownstone.org returns to discuss mostly economic matters, especially inflation and its inherent threat, but also the destruction of fiat currencies, and he explains why he thinks that Bill Gates is so crazy. It's in podcast 138.
Subscribe now on iHeartRadio and get the latest episode now. The Leighton Smith Podcast, powered by News Talk ZB.